Hello, this is Abir from Digital of Things. I'll be moderating today's session. I have on board Aditi from Digital of Things and Julia from Creative 971. So just for you to know a little bit of background, both Digital of Things and Creative 971 were born in the UAE. Both they work with clients in the UAE and across the region, which goes forward for me to ask the next question. Julia, since most of your clients are coming from an e-commerce background, did you see any trends that are specific to the UAE and the region, and do you see any similarities there or any differences compared to other regions?
That's a good one, because normally when e-commerce businesses come, they have a specific idea, and they all are either, let's say, local or global brands, and they have a vision of where they want to go. So they would probably go and show us some reference websites. The reference websites would at some point be, most of the time, a global kind of benchmark, and then looking at a global benchmark, even within a global brand, you would have localized or regionalized websites, so a different approach, a different touch and feel, different image arrangement, different content placement, different mega menus and drop downs and whatever happens on the site, not only from a desktop but on a mobile perspective as well. And I think that's just a bit of a challenge to understand that in our region the content gets consumed more simple, right? Like as simple as it gets. People will say, I love this website, it's so simple, it's so intuitive, it's so nice, but there's so much work that goes into it to making it look like so effortless. And I think that's an aspect that we see that people do not really understand, the time and effort that goes into making that site so smooth and consumable and easy on the eye. And that's exactly why you guys like from Dot and why us are focusing on that, because this is what in the end would allow that, happiness and content feeling as a customer or as a user actually interacting with that site. So I think from a UAE and international perspective, that most of the time UAE websites are or should be more and more structured, right? Like simplified, as in that starts with the categorization, collection. Product categories are sometimes very chaotic, I would say, and that's with no offense. It's just getting things streamlined and categorized the right way to funnel the correct steps through and structure it, and that comes down as well to running the marketing. So what works probably in Saudi doesn't work in Oman or in the UAE, so even there it's a huge difference. Just as one example, we see a lot of traffic on Snapchat in Saudi. It's a boomer there. Sure. Here people are not really using it anymore. It's much more Instagram or WhatsApp, so-called in our region. And yeah, I just feel that there's a big span of, even within the country, there are so many differences. Even when I look back at Germany, right, where I'm from, so I see that there's a huge difference in the way people interact with websites. And sometimes in the UAE it's all about, okay, let's put the product out, let's sell, but the story are missing, the elements of understanding why to buy from the brand, what has the brand to offer, what are their unique selling points. It's more of that, let's say, refining the brand values and where the brand wants to go. That's a bit missing here, and I think that's compared to global brands where they aim and where they look at, where we have to constantly educate the users or the clients that to spend the right effort on the branding as well before trying to make the website most perfect, because it's not. The website is a tool, it's like a train taking them somewhere, but it doesn't help anything if that content is not right or the brand perception is not right.
True,
I think
true.
that was hopefully all what I had, or if I missed something, let me know.
Yeah. Aditi, from your perspective, do you see the same trends that Julia has mentioned from a user experience point?
100%. I think I'll step back a little. So trends are clearly the same. I think the reason that's happening, again, it's coming from me as a researcher. Dot has spoken to over 500 different users in the last 2 years, and what we've observed, everyone here in Dubai comes from very different cultural backgrounds. They're different countries. I think there are 200 odd nationalities that reside together in the UAE. So when you were talking about Germany, and same thing, before this I was in India, and I realized when we talk about Indian audience or for the clients that I was working with in the US, we know our audience because there is a simpler user group there. Now, when it comes to Dubai, and we see that all the time when we are recruiting for our usability testing sessions or interviews, there's just so many people, we don't know who to focus on. And when the clients come to us and say, create so-and-so thing, or we want to sell so-and-so thing, and the audience is everybody, it is impossible to cater to everybody because there are people who come from much more technically advanced country. Their expectations are different. They've been exposed to much different kind of UX flows. So I think the e-commerce in the region is very tricky. We cannot cater to everybody, which is why, as Julia was saying, we try to dumb down everything. We want to make it so simple, the lesser the words, so that we can cater to people who speak 100 different languages. We are able to cater to different sentiments. I'll tell you what happened in some of our research, where it was just a soft drink advert on the website, e-commerce website, and the participant just said, this is not acceptable in my culture to be actually holding hands and sharing a drink. So it's a small thing, but on an e-commerce platform, the moment you put a brand out there with such an imagery, and you've put off half of your audience right there. So content is very critical. I've also noticed language. Now, although through research I've understood there are not many people who consume content only in Arabic. Mostly it's bilingual or English, but we still create content in Arabic. We create websites. So again, looking at something that's not just responsive but also works well when read left to right and right to left. So I think UX gets very tricky in this region when it comes to e-commerce.
I think I have a point on that as well, because that's the same thing when you're having a right or left-handed person, right? Especially in a mobile menu, they would like overreach here, jump there, and then you have the same with Arabic and English. You have that kind of constant left-right thing that you have to measure, and from a Arabic brain or flow, it needs to make sense as well, but also in the English. And I think that's also when we come to design or do the websites or actualize the websites, that you have that perception, or people have that perception, that certain things need to follow through exactly the same way. You just mirror it. It's not how it is, but everyone thinks, okay, just mirror it, like just do it left to right, or right to left, sorry. But I think it's a very, very valid point that this is much, much trickier than it looks like.
If I may ask you, we've talked quite a bit about the e-commerce. What are your takes on m-commerce, or what we refer to as mobile commerce, basically?
Yeah, I mean, mobile commerce, as I just quickly touched on the Arabic menu that we talked about, we see predominant shift from e-commerce on a desktop to m-commerce, like mobile commerce. That's on the phone, that can be a tablet, that can be any sort of smart device. The engagement is much higher because in the UAE, I think it's by average, almost every person classified at least at 2 mobile devices. So that doesn't mean technically the laptop, it's literally an iPad or a tablet, or sort of even 2, 4, 5 phones. I don't know how many phones people have with the job and private phones, etc. So we noticed that the engagement is much higher when it comes to mobile, and I think we had the numbers even from Shopify on the global platform. Any Shopify merchant on the platform, they did around 2.4 billion US dollar checkouts on that Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, and they've done it on global average 74% mobile.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And that's super high. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've probably shopped as well, or Aditi have probably shopped on the mobile.
Guilty.
Yeah. And I think it's just like, it's applications making our life easier. And that's another point when we talked about as well, what's in the UAE, what's really different from other countries. I think it's our app community. There's, for everything there's an app, right? There's an app to change fonts, there's an app to, apart from the filters and everything, but even banks have apps. Like, I've literally signed up for a bank account yesterday about tracking my steps, and then getting this converted to a percentage of my account. And it's literally everything that you can engage with. And we've seen that with the retailers, with the with the shoppers, like shopping fashion, an app would just allow push notifications, and since you're all the time holding the device, you just get much more interacted with it.
Exposure, definitely. It gives you more exposure.
I'm glad, Abir, you got this topic up. Thank you so much. I thought we'd completely missed to talk about Ecommerce. It's very critical. UAE has over 90% penetration, mobile penetration, which is like, I don't know, at least much higher than the global mobile penetration, right? So while as a UXer we know we take the mobile first approach for the responsive website, there are obviously a lot of native apps that we're working on. It's interesting when you brought up that data that there was so much sales, because whenever we are doing any kind of data analytics for our existing clients, we've always seen a lot of traffic on mobile, but the conversion happens on desktop more. And I have no idea what the reason is. Maybe that we're doing the mobile so poorly that people still get the comfort of making the monetary transaction on the desktop. Clearly a sign for us to get better at that. Or it is that mobile is used more for browsing, which is why what I also feel is that on mobile we need to make, for particularly Ecommerce, we need to make browsing and searching for products super simple. Maybe voice initiated, maybe scan and go, and we were trying out, the startup came to us and they said you could literally scan a thing and they will tell you where to buy and what. So I think we're looking at something that eases the trouble and makes everything mobile. So yeah, thanks for bringing the topic up.
If we were to wrap this conversation up, what would your last, or a sentence or a few words on the topic be?
Well, I would summarize by saying, as I mentioned, that there are just too many people we cater to, and there are just too many different kind of user groups. I would say research becomes very critical. So instead of creating something and let it go out, give it to the users to consume and either build a very bad brand perception or come back with negative feedback, it is better to test early. Test with various user groups and changing the mindset to, yes, I know who I'm catering to, not everybody, because we can't cater to everybody. So research is very critical, and identifying which slice of that audience will fit, your product will fit to. Yeah. I think that would definitely.
I think so too. I mean, that's what we already do in when it comes to marketing, digital marketing on e-commerce sites, because you have different audiences. You try, for example, a picture of Santa, right, with a red hat or with a blue hat, and then, for some people it just feels off to see Santa with a blue hat because you always get portrayed Santa in a red hat. But for some users, this is probably the color they want to see it, or they identify their happiness with or Santa with, and it's tricky to see. But sometimes it's just literally testing on those ads and then understanding, like, is this working well for maybe the younger generation, this is working well for this generation, and as Aditi said, then categorizing in, not fitting in the box, but just trying to find a frame to target it more narrowed. And then as we have all digitalized, the beauty about this, we have captured the data, so we have the understanding how many people click there, how many people would actually take a purchase decision from there, and those are data-driven decisions, which I think is just amazing. And just as a global example, I mean, I think Amazon, as being one of the e-commerce leaders globally, they are predominantly taking everything on database. So if you've even seen how Amazon as themselves have changed over the years just by reading and listening, understanding their data, refining their website to make it centric for the user, and that has the most to do with user experience, right? Because that's what they're all about. They don't want anyone to drop off their site. And yeah, I think a lot of people should learn from that, data-driven decisions rather than what they want, for example, or what I want for my brand. If let's say the blue Santa hat works better for my brand, I shouldn't be obsessed about the red color, for example. I should go with what my users want, and that should be the key message for anyone building a website, building e-commerce, or a user experience. I mean, research is one, but then as well listen to where the audience actually is. And I think as well in the pandemic situation, so much has changed how users perceive information.